Alright, hello and welcome to my channel. Let's dive right on in. Alright, today I have a digital piece for you. So this one is a pretty time-consuming piece that I did of a girl, a scuba diving girl, holding some coral. Let's go over the materials that I used. So I used my Huion 610 Pro. The program I used was Krita. And then actually behind the scenes I used Autodesk Sketchbook, I believe is the program, and I sort of sketched out the figure of the girl on my tablet, just really quick gesture sketches and stuff to figure out the anatomy and stuff, so that when it was like a little bit more convenient to do it that way, and then I just moved over to the computer to do the rest of it. A little bit more finished and kind of a fun style. Yep, so those are the materials that I used. Pretty simple for a digital drawing. Let's talk about the artwork now, because this was a really fun, really experimental piece for me. I've never done anything in this sort of style. I really love the sort of lineless style that some artists are able to use, and I wanted to try and do something like that. And I know I could just use a paintbrush and use that to get the right shape, but it's a lot more unpredictable, and like it works for like some normal styles, like if I'm going very painterly, how I'm used to doing it, then I definitely want to use the paintbrush to get the right texture and blending. But I didn't want either of those things in this piece. I wanted it to be really smooth, really exact, so I did it a little differently. And so I ended up using what's called the Bezier Curve tool in Krita. I think it's called the pen tool in Photoshop. I haven't used Photoshop in a long time, so I don't remember. But I use this Bezier Curve tool to come up with the shapes of the different pieces of this painting. So I would sort of outline the shape of like the girl's body, or the background sort of coral structure, and I would outline it with the curve tool. Then I'd fill it in with the brush tool, because for some reason the fill tool, I couldn't get that to work the way I wanted it to, so I just used the paintbrush, and that worked pretty well. And then I'd take some really general shapes, sort of try and make it look like there's shading, and have, you know, I didn't just want it to be blocks of color that didn't have any like features on them, or I still wanted it to look like the thing I was drawing, even if it was going to be really flat and stuff. So yep, that was a really interesting technique. I definitely never used this tool before, so that was a learning experience, just to sort of figure out how to make that work. For a while I didn't know how to just get a line. It had to be like a shape where I connected the shape at the end, so it was enclosed. But eventually I figured out how to make just a line with that tool. Oh, and by the way, this curve tool, you draw 2 points, and then you pull the little rod between them, which makes a curve. You can have it go in whatever direction you want, and then the line is now curved in that way. So that's how you get the line that you're looking for. And once I got the hang of it, it was pretty easy. Sometimes I'd pull the rod in the wrong direction and I'd get a shape that I wasn't looking for, but usually it wasn't much of a problem. So that was really fun to try out this new technique that I'd never tried before, and I hadn't seen a lot of like speed paints with it. I don't know that this counts as a speed paint because I'm not using a brush tool or anything, but I'm still gonna call it that. Speed art, whatever. So again, another piece of this was because I was doing shapes without lines. I wasn't thinking in terms of lines. I had to think in terms of what shape was going to be there, and also like if this thing has a shape, what shape is the shadow going to be? So I had to think about that as well. So a lot of thought went into shape and form and figure, which was really interesting, and it took a lot of thought. So that's part of why this art piece took so much longer, that even without trying to blend everything together and get tones and stuff right, I had to think about what shape was going to make sense where, and it had to work well together to make a cohesive whole as well. So that was an important piece of this piece that I had to think a lot about. Another thing that took a lot of thought was the colors for this piece. I did, when I was sketching the girl out on my fire tablet, I thought about her color scheme, and so I figured she would be sort of red and blue and grays for her colors, as well as like I thought about the color for the coral because that was a pretty important part of it, but I didn't really think a lot about the color of the background, and I had to figure out how to do those pieces to get it all very cohesive, even though I hadn't quite planned it all out beforehand. But in the end, I'm really happy with the colors. They're pretty vibrant, but it worked out pretty well. One other quick thing to talk about here is like I did the sort of rippling waters at the top of the image, where like the light would be reflecting off the surface of the ocean or the water wherever she is, and I kind of really struggled with figuring out how to make that work with the curve tool, and that was a big challenge. I had to make it look right, so I did look up quite a few reference photos for that to get it to sort of work and look like there was ripples on the top and not just random blobs, because that was happening quite a bit. So you'll see me go through a couple evolutions with that. And yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to say about the artwork. So now we're going to talk about coral, sort of an important piece of this artwork, and that was the reason I wanted to do this artwork with the girl holding the coral. When I first came up with the concept for this idea, it was actually a lot smaller and like more zoomed up on the actual coral themselves, and it was like hands holding a bouquet of coral, and that was the focus. So there wasn't an environment, there was no girl, but I started doing that piece, and in the end I wasn't feeling it, so I sort of went away for a while, let my brain think about it on its own, does that sometimes, and then I was able to come back to it with a more appealing idea, and this is what I came up with. I'm really happy that first it was just going to be this girl holding it, but then I got the idea to do a whole environment and have her in the background, and kind of interacting with the environment, which worked out really well. I don't do a lot of backgrounds, and I was really happy with, having the chance to do this. It worked out really, really well. So let's talk about corals. So inside the sort of bony exterior of the coral, you have inside these little polyps, which are the actual animals in the coral. And, they're just little cute little animals. They're kind of colorless and related to anemones and jellyfish. So I think, yeah, that's pretty much, they're kind of gooey, tentacly, pretty much very similar to anemones and jellies. But the really cool thing about corals is that inside the bony exterior that the corals make together, so there's a bunch of them in one piece of coral. Inside with them, they host some algae that make up the color. They are the reason that corals are so colorful. And this algae, as well as, making them pretty, also provides them with food and, really helpful because the algae photosynthesize, so they can provide sugars and nutrients that the algae, that the polyps and the coral can't get by themselves, which is the reason that most coral is pretty shallow. They live in the shallows because they need sunlight to be able to, for the algae to produce food. So they live in the shallows, and then the polyps also have, well, I talked about them earlier, they have tentacles as well, which they use to sort of filter out food from the water. You just reach out and grab food on their own, so that's another way that they get food. So it's really cool how the algae and the coral work together, that the coral, it gives the algae a place to grow and also sort of a protection for them, and then the coral gets food in return for helping out the algae. So that's just so cool to me that they have a little agreement and it works out so well. So reefs are a really important place on Earth. They're super impactful for us and our life, but also, most of the ocean. Most of the diversity in the ocean lives in coral reefs. It's actually a quarter of the ocean species live in coral reefs, which is huge considering reefs don't make up a lot of the ocean, the ocean floor. They don't take up a lot of room, but still a quarter of the ocean's incredible species live in them, and they, provide homes to so many animals and fish and cool animals. So it's incredible how much they provide to the ocean. And because of that, they provide so much to us. They, we benefit so much from the reefs, not just their beauty, but also as a food source and just to balance the ocean so that we can take advantage of so many of the other parts of it that help our lives. So yeah, that's so cool about about reefs and about coral. Unfortunately, there is a large amount of danger for them with ocean acidification being a big one, as well as ocean warming. So you'll hear a lot about ocean bleaching, which is where the important animals or the algae in the coral die because of pH imbalance or the higher temperatures, and they can't survive And so they die, so the coral then can't survive, and that's when we get that bleaching, and like it's just the hard outer shell. There's no real life in there anymore. It doesn't provide anything else to the other animals that like would eat them, or just live in them and need protection from them. So it's a big deal, and it's sort of the reason I wanted to do this artwork was about the coral's colors and the importance of that, thinking of them as colorful creatures and how important that color is to the ocean, and just want people to think about the importance of the colors and the coral themselves and how much impact we have on them and how much they have on us. And it's really sad how much is being destroyed, but I think as long as we think about them and keep them in mind, we can make a difference for them. So that's sort of what I wanted to think about and talk about for this video. I hope you enjoy watching me try something new with this digital piece. I really enjoyed it, and I learned a lot just about coral and about the possibilities for digital art. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. I will put links in the description if you would like to learn more about coral. I will give you the links to the sources that I used to find out all this information, and I really hope that you learned something and you enjoyed it. So thank you so much. Until next time, live life respectfully. Alrighty, bye.